When we get into the regular meeting, will you offer a prayer for us? Brandon, will you lead us in the pledge when we get into the regular meeting? So we'll call to order the work session, the Far West City Planning Commission. The first item on our agenda is parks. And parks are an interesting commodity. Do you know if parks are being considered on our new impact fee study? So we have a challenge here. So you pay a series of fees when you build a home. And those fees then are put into the price of the home. And so most homeowners don't even understand that they're paying a series of fees. So you pay, what they calculate is what is your new impact on the sewer system? What is your new impact on the stormwater system? And in this case, what is your new impact in providing parks for the city of Far West? Currently, our park fee is between $1,600 and $1,700 per lot. I don't remember the exact amount. Would you say that again, please?
1,694.
So $1,694 is our actual park fee. So each lot would pay the city essentially $1,700. And then that money is used to develop parks. It can be used for anything park related, but that has to be outlined in an impact fee study that is done. And these studies are done periodically, sometimes as often as every 3 years. Let me just see if somebody needs to be excused before we go any further.
Probably Steve.
No.
Since we're talking about parks.
Yeah. So let me just run a quick. So if we had 100 lots,
That's exactly right.
that is $169,000. So $170,000 for 100 lots. So in 100 lots, we potentially, based on national averages, about 225 people. On Far West averages, that would be about 400 people, sorry. So if we had 1,000 people move in, obviously it would be $1,694,000. That's not correct.
That seemed high.
That's
You
too high.
put in an extra decimal place.
I did. So if, let's say, well, let's do this. It'll be 250 lots. So at 250 lots, we would collect $423,500 based on our current park fee. And that can be used to help compensate the developer, or it can be used to develop the park. I don't believe impact fees can be used to maintain parks.
Well, they can, that would be my question. How much of that is dedicated for land acquisition?
I believe you can buy land and develop the park. But I don't believe you can use it for ongoing maintenance. That has to come out of current taxes and fees. The developer can't be held responsible for that long term.
Now, have we done that in Far West, or is that you're citing the state?
I'm citing Far West City's impact fee for parks. And then there's state law that governs impact fees, very strict state law on how the money is spent, when the money is spent, how long a city can hold the money. I know for a fire district building buildings, they can only hold the money for 6 years. And the law actually says if they don't spend the money, they have to reimburse those that expended the money. And so you have to time things very carefully so that you can acquire land and then you can hopefully save enough money, add, potential other funding sources or bond monies to actually build the building in this period of time that's regulated by state law.
So for the Hart subdivision, maybe Lindsay can help us. Where did that money, park money go? When the Hart subdivision was built and we acquired all these park impact fees for land acquisition or whatever, where did that money actually go?
For what subdivision?
For Hart.
The Hart.
That's probably a Cody question. I don't.
No, but you
I don't-
understand why I'm asking the question,
Yes.
because they never built a park.
No.
They had a detention basin.
Okay.
Go into any park in the city.
Yeah, so.
Ask that question about any of these.
So for instance, all of that money could have gone into the Smith Family Park.
Okay, well, there's the black hole, right?
Now, also, we need to understand that there was a lot of money donated and there were, there were some deals made to bring in fill that didn't cost us anything. The Smith Family Park, I think was done as inexpensively as you can do a park. But as you know, the park equipment is expensive. If you buy cheap park equipment, you're actually just begging to be sued, because you are liable for what happens on that equipment. And so you're almost bound to buy high-end stuff. We take some risk by putting zip lines in our parks, but the kids seem to really, really enjoy them, and thus far we've not had a problem. So there are pluses and minuses to this whole thing. As land becomes more and more expensive, this becomes more and more challenging. Now, the city can, if I understand the law correctly, I think I do, take land or other donations in lieu of impact fees. So let's say there was a developer who had a piece of ground and there was an obvious location for a park. It would enhance the development, enhance the sellability of his other lots. He or she could come to the city and say, I would like to donate this piece of ground in lieu of the 100 or how many ever impact fees. And as long as the city can justifiably say that that is fair market value or less, that's legal to do. The challenge with a deal like that is then that leaves the city responsible to develop that piece of property and to acquire water rights and everything else that you need and maintain it. I know that there are members of the city council that are concerned with the goals we've set. Not that I don't trust Steve, I do, but I went in and verified all his numbers relevant to parks, and he is spot on. All the recommendations from any source you want to pick that I could find that looked like a reliable source recommends the same ratios that Steve has presented to us. And so I'm comfortable presenting those numbers when we in fact present the general plan. Parks are a challenge. The other challenge with parks, as has been brought up, is you then maintain that park forever. A park like the Smith Family Park, that size, you can pretty much dedicate one employee, wages and benefits to that park forever. And so, wages run around 40%, or benefits run about 40% of the wage. You can do the math. We're looking at a maintenance fee of the Smith Family Park in the neighborhood of $100,000 a year to maintain that park. Now, is it worth it as a city? I would say yes, it is. Parks enhance. I got a real understanding of parks. I was driving through small town Utah several years ago. And when parks were proposed, when those cities were built, the people they had to think they were nuts. I mean, they were out in the middle of nowhere. They were surrounded by vast wilderness, and yet all those little cities put in a park. And it was a holiday weekend, and there were families, big families, what looked like family reunions in every one of those parks I passed that day. And so they have real value to cities. The citizens, it enriches the lives of the citizens. So will we get some conversation from the city council when this is proposed? I think we will. I think we make our case, and then they are the decision makers. That's not our role. But I think what Steve has proposed is excellent, and we can back without question as far as I'm concerned. We do have to consider that there is the cost to put them together, which we have the benefit of impact fees to support. But then the ongoing cost is something the city will have to absorb. Okay.
Is the impact fee a single time? Or every time they sell the land, would they
So I
pay
was
an impact
wondering,
fee
does the
or
developer pay that?
just
when he-
single?
Yeah.
Just the developer?
Or does that come every time a lot's sold?
The developer, I believe, pays those as well, it depends. And you're right. Thank you, Lindsay. It's paid with each lot. So when you want to build a house, you'll pay, there are cities now where you pay upwards of $30,000 before you scratch the dirt.
Oh, yeah. Easily, a permit here, it's 14,000 bucks.
10, 12, 12.
Yeah.
You've got the building permit, you've got a sewer fee, you've got a stormwater fee, you've got a park fee. Do we have other fees, Lindsay?
And there are,
Water
Water
connect?
separate, they're paying water separate, parks,
Any other impact
stormwater,
fees?
stormwater,
Mhm.
sewer. The city doesn't have one, just Central Weaver.
Right,
it's basically anything you discharge into, you're paying an impact fee.
right, because
in your
you're
building.
you're adding something new to the system. That's how these are.
And then you're paying a connection fee to your water, your secondary water, things like that.
And these things are argued fairly regularly. Many years ago, there were cities that were supposedly supporting their city government on impact fees. And so the legislature tightened way back on when, where, and how impact fees could be imposed.
But then when the home gets sold again, it's a one-time,
There's
it's
no,
not
that,
reassessed.
so the impact of that structure, the new impact of that structure has been paid. Anything after that is considered ongoing impact of the structure.
Okay, now getting back to this hypothetical case we're going to be considering later today.
Okay.
So we collect the impact fees. We're anticipating a park in that area, not on the subdivision, not on the phase one of the subdivision.
Okay.
The impact fees are paid. They go into a city pot. And my question is, who makes the decision how that's managed and how it's earmarked?
Our accountant budgets for things
Yeah.
like that.
I mean,
So-
could it be explicitly earmarked for the park in this? Otherwise, you also mentioned there's a time limit too. So I'm just wondering, we have the money, but by the time we get to the park, that money doesn't exist anymore.
Right, so that's the reason you don't earmark for a specific park. So let's say we earmarked for a park in the area you're discussing, and the owner of that land decides that he's going to run cattle on that property and not sell it ever. He decides he likes it. We run out of time with that money, and then the city then is obligated to reimburse that money. And so that becomes a real challenge. So you bring it into a pot and you may use it for the Smith Family Park. But then as other developments come in, and sometimes you'll have a piece of ground that's not cost effective to build upon. And so the developer may say, I'll just give that to you. Because the guy that develops the subdivision and the developer that builds on the individual lots may or may not be the same person. And so depending on what his motivation or her motivation might be, You may have a situation where they donate the land to the city. Similarly, you may see them donate land to schools and say, I'd like to see an elementary school built here. The school district would do the same thing. We appreciate the ground. We cannot specify what would be built there.
Basically, I think, and maybe I might be sort of off, but our accountant's job is to kind of predict what will be coming in the year and then rolling that money over so that it is being used so that you don't end up in that situation. And he allocates it for things that will be happening that year to be used in that fund.
So that can be added to, there can be new infrastructure added to current parks, right? Like the pickleball courts down at Mountain View
Yes.
and things like that.
As long as you can justifiably say that it's new impact, I believe you can use the money. The other thing a city may do is I believe, in fact, I'm pretty sure that you can buy a piece of ground to protect the money, as long as it's designated for a park, but the city can change their mind. So if they have a piece of property available, but it's not ideal, and they have an opportunity to acquire that land, they could do that with even with the forethought that hopefully we don't have to use that. Now, at some point, that no longer becomes viable and they have to do something. But, and it's not that you're trying to get out of that per se, but you have to follow the requirements in the law, and they are fairly specific. I've not dealt with parks specifically. I've dealt with fire stations, and it's a real challenge because if you set up an impact fee and go through a recession, you have to find a way to use that money in 6 years. And if there's not enough money, that can be a real challenge. So it's much easier to spend too much than too little, because if there's too little, you have to find a way, another funding source. So,
So in this case, this hypothetical case I'm talking about, the future, what I see in my crystal ball is there is some land that may not be buildable, that might be a potential location for a park. And you might be able to twist the developer's arm to put in a few more high density houses and contribute more to the park, which our ordinance allows. But you couldn't necessarily count on any of the money banked from an earlier phase to help out.
well, that depends on the city's forethought. So in this particular hypothetical condition, the city could approach that owner and with a long-term plan. And the benefit of a piece of property like you're talking about, Lou, is you can bring in fill to build a park that is very, very different and make a very nice area that is very different than bringing in fill to build a building on.
Correct. Yeah.
So you can put in drainage under a soccer field much easier than you can put in drainage to build a structure. And so, but those things also add to the cost of the park. So, you might spend $500,000 and not have anything to show for it. But you've laid the groundwork for a beautiful park down the road at some point. We also could consider a natural park and a series of trails through a given area, which is not necessarily a bad idea either. But you have to, I was involved with one, the people got all wrapped up in natural vegetation, and it ended up a weed patch because they wouldn't listen to what, I don't know why people, and I think all of us do this to a point, we get very suspicious of people that are suggesting something out of our level of understanding. And so then this particular area had to go back in after the fact and completely re-landscape a rather large plot because the citizens decided weeds weren't that good of an idea after all. And it is challenging, but when you deal with the citizens, sometimes you have to give them what they want. even though it's the wrong thing. I mean, we work for the people, and, you know, you do the best you can in explaining, based on experience and professionalism and education, various things, what would be the best perspective. But ultimately, we work for the people. So, other questions on parks?
Go ahead.
I was just wondering when this particular impact fee was instituted and if it could be raised.
It can, what happens is you pay, so Zions is a common group that will do these studies in the state of Utah. So you pay them, the impact fee study would likely run between 15 and 20,000. Is that where we're at? Okay, so the city then would have to pay Zion's Bank $15,000 to $20,000. They do an impact study based on all the factors, all the facts they can gather relevant to the need for parks, how many parks the city wants, where they want them approximately, and what they're going to cost and what projected costs might be. And then they come up with a per unit cost. So let's say we were going to build townhomes in Far West, that the state legislature decides we have to build a certain number of townhomes. At that point, we probably would want to do a new impact fee study for parks, because our current impact fee study does not include any high density housing. And that
To
could,
do a lot of impact studies because you have
No
more
kidding.
homes and
right,
less
so
area.
you've got roads, again,
Yeah.
sewer, stormwater, all of that. So, and like I say, some suggest that you do these every 3 years. And so the fee is all based on the impact fee study. Your fees could go down. Your fees could go up. But you have no control over that to a point. So the impact fee study is done. Zion's Bank has no authority to come in and say, Far West City, your impact fee is this amount. So they present a study to the municipality, whoever it might be, and then the municipality makes the decision, this is what we're going to pay. And they may change those fees less than. If I understand it correctly, they cannot make them more than the impact fee study represents, but they can reduce them if they decide they're just unreasonable. You can also, on a case-by-case basis, if there's something completely unusual, Kimberly Clark did a building for the fire department, or for their plant. The impact fee study charged them several $1,000s. It was an unreasonable expectation and really had not been considered properly in the impact fee study, because commercial property pays a different fee than residential property. And so in this case, the fire district actually considered a variance and reduced their single impact fee. And it was not a reasonable.
And that happens quite often
Yeah.
especially with all the new LID standards and having to retain so much on site. People come after you and say, hey, I don't want to pay that much into the storm sewer impact fee because I'm not discharging that much into it. So it comes up all the time.
So it's only binding in terms of you can't exceed it, but it's not binding in terms of you can make it less than.
Right, and
Is
so,
that correct?
right, that's how I understand it, and it does happen. Generally, cities will adopt whatever the impact fee, whatever is presented to them, because they can justify that. When you start reducing fees, that becomes an arbitrary decision, and that's a lot more likely to get you in trouble.
So I have a question. So they came in and presented this to us, right? And then we talked.
We really should not discuss a specific development in this
I
work
was just
session.
talking about a hypothetical.
Okay. Hypothetical.
So,
So what's, so that hypothetical?
Yeah,
It's pretty much
hypothetically.
impact fees is all we can.
All we can do.
We
Yes.
can do.
That's what I-
right,
Or they can donate property.
right.
Or
They can donate
If they
properties.
own it, right?
And okay, I mean, the Smith Family Park, again, is an excellent example. The Smith family donated that land. That's a significant donation. I'm sure they enjoyed the tax benefit from that. But that still doesn't begin to cover, you know, what they could have made on a residential development in that property would have been a lot of money.
So maybe, let me put it in a hypothetical. Hypothetically, you want to develop on a certain amount of land, we have a park proposed on another set of land. Can we have them hold the money until this is closer?
So no, they pay the money so when you come in for your building permit is when you pay all of your impact fees.
So we can't guarantee that this is going to affect this at all.
Because it's in a different, it's in a different phase.
So it's fun.
But the way that the fund is accounted for still like projects and is able to, like, it's not like all of a sudden we'll get 12 years down the road, there'll be nothing in the fund. Like, that doesn't happen. The way the accountant rolls the money is to project what's coming in the future and keeping those amounts. Yeah,
And what he anticipates will bring in.
right. So it won't like drain it.
If you become landlocked as a city and have no more space, you will stop getting park impact fees because there's no new construction. So you will eventually, at some point, reach your borders and not have anybody else building here, and you won't get those.
The last development is an Aue, because you're not borrowing from future developments.
So, Sunset City is an example of this. They have very little tax base and they are landlocked. And they constantly struggle with funding things within their city. Although they do have a couple of beautiful parks that were developed many, many years ago. And again, nobody ever says we have too many parks.
And the hope would be if you get to the point where you're all developed, those parks already exist.
That's the goal, is to take a plan, what Steve has presented, what we have put in the general plan, and say, this is our long-term plan. So at build out, we have sufficient parks for the needs of our citizens. And I think what's been presented was very well done.
So taking all of what we've been talking about and directing into some kind of a understanding / plan, I think we agree that this particular agenda item that's on the docket for today, it just is what it is. It has nothing to do with this park. They're gonna get the park assessment fees as the land gets developed, and then.
Right. So
That's-
and that brings up a good issue, because you make a great point. When we present parks, we need to speak in larger areas. So that, because we don't know what shifting will happen or things change, and your ability to develop changes as property values increase. And so what looks like a lot of money today, 3 years from now, may not be near enough. And so we have to be very careful when we say we're going to put a park here, even though it's the most obvious place to put it. We need to speak in general terms in larger areas. But
Well, oh, go ahead.
I just want to make one comment, and I think this is unique to Far West. Ken Fippen has been working his keister off and getting grants, ramp grants. He's constantly out there looking for grants and looking for different monies to help to help augment the money that's coming in from the park impact fees. He's always out there doing it, and he's doing it now to improve all the other parks in the city.
interesting.
So,
But your narrative on the park piece of the general plan will show a map, and it will show a park positioned in each one of these parcels. But the narrative will somehow say, this isn't the exact location of the park. I mean, that needs to be very clear, and that
it could
addresses.
be
exactly-
negotiable as the,
Well,
Yeah.
this is,
You just
this
say
park
Indian.
serves this area, and it may
So
be
pick your-
anywhere in
Right,
that.
we need
Yeah.
to allow for for some flexibility. I mean, in this particular area that we're talking about, I mean, you're talking about, does it go here or here or here?
Right.
or here,
It just
right?
depends on where they,
But,
yeah, where it can fit within.
right.
Well, and the difference of an acre, so let's say we're going to put a 20-acre park somewhere, not huge, beautiful park. The developer comes back in and says, you know, to make this work and to make it pencil, I need 2 more acres. And so we do an 18-acre park instead of a 20-acre park. Really, the value to the city is the same. And I'm not suggesting we give away the farm here, but we have to understand that when a developer comes in and presents a project to Far West, we are all on the same team, okay? The goal is an attractive development to enhance the city. If we do that, it increases his profit margin. It increases the livability of our home, provides for new citizens or for our children or whoever wants to live here. And so we need to remember that as we negotiate back and forth, and there's always some negotiation because of perspective, that ultimately we are on the same team as the developer is on. And we will have citizens who will come in here and scream, no more development. I want to keep Far West the way it is. And that's a beautiful sentiment. But what most people don't understand is when you approve the first subdivision, you have approved them all. At that point, all you're doing is managing things, and hopefully we manage them well. That's why we're talking about parks. It's part of that management process. The developer actually wants there to be parks and a similar amenities because it makes his property values more. But for him or her, that still has to pencil at the end of the day. So.
Another question, so another hypothetical, I own this land and I can I can purchase all the land around where the proposal of the park is. We have no leverage in that.
You can't landlock somebody.
You know what I mean?
You have to leave streets into undeveloped property. You cannot landlock somebody.
Could you develop around that?
Well,
You
you
didn't own
still
that,
have to approve the subdivision.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's ridiculous where they've got a U-shaped subdivision.
So this hypothetical property, right, that we're talking about is not even, I mean, it's close, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not even where we had thought the park was gonna be. It's outside, plus all the land north of them is another developer. So
That's where we got stuck here, is that it's tricky because it's not all owned by the
Now,
same person.
you'll remember in our proposed general plan, we specifically recommend that owners coordinate in the development of larger pieces so that we don't end up with a U around one person who then loses all their money or doesn't get proper value for their money.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Steve.
No, you're fine. So all I was saying is that as it pertains to the immediate need, it's just gonna be status quo for now. But what we probably do wanna look at is, and I've got to pull up the document on a computer, but you know, where are the roads going north, right? Because the proposed park area is immediately north of where this development is going in. So if we're, you know, stubbing a road going right through the middle of where the park's gonna be, you know, maybe there's considerations to make there. You know, maybe, I guess my concern is that we put this all in the back of this developer to the north, we're gonna have more issues, right? So it's hard because we don't have any plans for that property yet.
Right, and that's, let's step into general plan real quick and then we can come back to parks if need be. So in our general plan, we're at a point now where we need to make this available to the public. We have held public meetings before, open houses and so forth, and they have had some impact, but the impact has been minimal. I am wondering if we didn't take snippets. So for instance, we'll take parks as an example, and we do a 2 or 3 minute blurb that we then post on YouTube or wherever, and we send the link out through our new email or text system. Email, is that what it is? Okay, whatever it is, so we send that out and we say for more information, can we put a counter on that? How many hits it gets? So then we have, so
Were we supposed to get a postcard or something? How come I've not signed up for this?
You had to.
Oh, we'll figure the website, but yeah, postcard went out.
I don't know what's wrong there. Okay, never mind. I'll go on the website.
mail.
Apparently I don't read it well. She knows I don't read it well, apparently.
Came through and.
Which is, I mean, I honestly think we need to do more, right? I think we need to make 3-minute YouTube videos and
Mhm.
20-second TikTok videos. And
TikTok.
Okay.
I'm serious.
You can be the star.
How's it go? You can be the TikTok.
I'll hold the camera while you're.
You know, and there's two pieces to this. You were talking about the dissemination piece, which I think is great. We've got to have a feedback piece to it as well.
Right.
right, and so we have a counter, so we can say,
Opened it.
let's say 1,000 people looked at this video. And we need to somehow give them a contact, whether it's a time of day, a day of the week, something, so we can say, for more information, do whatever this might be.
Or comment on this or.
We could,
Give them a link
I am volunteering right away, so we can set up a quick website. I mean, this stuff
Chat
is not
line or
hard,
something.
right? We can direct them somewhere where they can just answer a survey.
Or, yeah,
right?
click this website to leave your
Well, I
feedback.
think that some public, I mean, we could do a much better job of informing the public, and then a subset of that public is gonna wanna engage in some form of dialogue. And it's the dialogue piece that I think we've gotta make sure we have too.
Okay, and I think that's, Ed, do you have a comment?
I do. As an IT guy, one of the things that I would caution you about as you make a place for people to put information is a way to verify that the people putting information have a reason to be involved or are vested in the results of what's happening. Instead of just people saying, oh, hey, look, here's a webpage someone wants to put parking, watch this.
Making sure they're
So there needs
citizens.
some kind of controls over that.
Right.
So I've never done this before, other than I had some classes in college where we had to, you have to do a video that you narrate, that I had to have my children help me with because I couldn't figure it out. But if we did a script, maybe each of us take turns on a given issue. So it's not the same face every time, because that sends the message one person is presenting the whole thing. But we take turns and we take the various sections of the general plan and do just a little 2 or 3 minute snippet on it, and then see if we can't impact more people than, I appreciate the people that have come out. I have a daughter that's an accountant, and when you tell her that 150 people out of 7,000 participated, she tells you that is statistically insignificant. So you don't tell the people that, but nonetheless, that's what the accountant tells me. So
I'm more concerned that every citizen in Far West cannot make the claim, I didn't know and I didn't have a chance to give you feedback. I'm not worried about the 70% apathy in the city. That doesn't concern me. It's the 30% that aren't apathetic that may feel that they've been left out of the
Well, and
decision.
the benefit of this is Steve can watch it at 6 o'clock in the morning. Geneva can watch it at 6 o'clock at night. Greg can watch it at 2 o'clock in the morning. Everybody gets the same information and has the same opportunity. And if I miss it today and my neighbor comes and says, you should see this, I can watch it tomorrow or the next day or any day thereafter.
And what we do is sorry to interrupt, we make, can't be more than 3 to 5 minutes. And we make a playlist based on every subsection of the general plan, and that way they can pick and choose what they want to see, because some people don't give a crap about parks,
Right.
right? But they're gonna care about the transportation plan, or whatever. And we just line it up as a buffet for them. They click on what they want. We give them links to give feedback. We give them a forum at some point where if they want to come in and talk, we talk. But I mean, there's lots of,
Is there a better idea?
Well, let me just make, it kind of contradicts a little bit. You've talked about the lack of success for an open house and a
No, I
public.
didn't say lack of success, just lack of participation.
I think the participation would improve if the front end is done well. In other words, if the information dissemination is much
I
better.
almost feel like this portion should go out first and then
Yeah.
that.
No, and I would be all for that.
After all of that, have people come, okay, we've got an open forum, open house, call it whatever you want. You've been well informed, and now we talk, and it's a face-to-face thing, and we can dialogue as long as you want. I think that is a
No, I think that's great.
final
Because
act ought to be
when
part of it.
people make the comments on these videos, we'll have information ready to answer their questions.
So we do have a small challenge here. We are moving quickly into the holiday season. Meetings get canceled. We're going to talk about that a little bit in our meeting tonight. The city council will have one meeting in November and one meeting in December. And I am concerned if we can't get this done relatively quickly, by the time the state legislature gets done with whatever they're going to do, and I cannot get a straight answer out of anybody. I don't know if Geneva's hearing any rumblings, other than I know they're gonna put requirements on cities. I know that, they've been very blunt, affordable housing and small lots are not the same thing. And so where this is all going to go, whether we will have tiny homes as a requirement, I would like to have our general plan in place because we're going to have to work on those things when they come out. And so we are in a small time crunch here.
So what is our time frame in that sense? Are we trying to have this done and wrapped up by the end of February or?
Yeah, I think if we were done with this, we had our general plan in place before the end of February, then everything is done before the legislation, because most of the legislation goes into effect either it's a day in May, and I apologize, I don't remember which day it is, or July 1. So that then would give us an opportunity to solidify this. We're done here and we can move into whatever, because frankly, it may cause us to revise the general plan.
Cause I'd like to see, maybe we could get it all put together before the end of the year, but I wouldn't want to have any sort of forums or even send it out before the holidays.
Right. I think
We want
we're,
like the month of January to get feedback, and maybe the first week of February, we held some sort of public, open house type thing, and then could kind of by the 1st of March, we were done. I don't know.
yeah, I don't think that's a bad goal at all. That would give us, so we might get great response. January's cold, miserable, nobody wants to leave their house. People might be inclined to watch the videos.
Once a new year, it's the start of new
Right.
year, like it's just a better time than
So
any time now.
Asking anybody to actually be anywhere for the next 2 months. Can be
Well, and that's why I'm saying on our part, it might be easier that we have that 2 months to kind of space out, get it done and.
So if we have so let's say we have a script, some pictures to go with the script. Geneva can do it on a Tuesday night. We set it up, Geneva pounds hers out. Darren can do his the next Friday. Brandon can do one Sunday afternoon, whatever. We can get
Or we
through
have a
these.
Work session that,
Just found them out in one day.
two odd work sessions.
Well,
It's something, you know what I mean? Just,
Yeah.
if
No,
it makes it a little, 'cause
so you need
someone's
to,
gonna have to video. My guess is it's you and you're not gonna do, oh, well, I'll meet you at 5 o'clock on Tuesday and 3 o'clock on Friday.
And you know what you're gonna say. I bring all my video equipment here, we get it all done
right?
in a work session.
Cause if we could get it done,
that's a better idea
if
than
we
I have.
could get it done by the video piece for us, all of us by November, then you have the whole month of December to edit and
Right.
be ready
I
to
like your
launch.
idea of a separate website. I think that's what Hoover did. They had a whole website dedicated just to general plan.
Okay, well,
And if you know how to do it.
Yeah.
don't-
okay, we're headed in the right direction, I think. And I don't think we need to, we can let the city council know what we're doing. I don't know that we need their approval. So we don't have to go through that whole process to get this started. And,
Do they have to review it before we have our public input?
no, I don't think they would. We're acting as the planning commission.
Okay, this is still in the formative stages, even with the public input.
Right. And so what we'll do is we'll do these little videos. We'll put them out first part of January,
Or sooner if we can.
sooner if we can.
I just want to make sure we don't hit that Christmas time because no one's looking. And once you've launched it and if you've ruined that experience and they've missed it the first shot, we're done.
Right.
I feel like.
Well, and we can talk about that. It may take longer to put all this together than we're thinking.
Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe the 1st of December and then maybe we do reassess. Who knows at that point?
One thing.
It's just, I think it's
that
important.
may take some time that we really haven't reviewed, and that's updating all the maps that goes with this. We got the road map, but that's on an old zoning map, you know, and we need a new zone map. The zone map? Okay, but we need to take the road map and put it on the new zone map. Anyway, I think we haven't spent a lot of time reviewing the maps, but we ought to get those updated ASAP, you know, so we can be looking at them and correcting anything that needs to be corrected, because that hasn't even been.
So this is just a suggestion, but just to give us the maximum amount of time. Can we divide up the sections of the general plan now and allow those people to start formulating their scripts now?
I think though, part of the script should seem similar.
Because
You know what I
we
mean?
have
Like
to
if we
peer-
all
we
write
have
our
to peer
own.
I was
review.
actually thinking Lou should just write the scripts.
Well,
I'm a little worried, like if each person writes their own script, it'll seem
I'm not
that's what I'm saying is that-
disjointed.
right.
Where we should have.
I'm just
In an old face as opposed to these pretty young faces, I'm not necessarily seeing the necessity of having every single one of us perform.
You don't.
Experienced and
I
trustworthy.
need you old guys in the picture so that I know it's not the young guys
Okay,
picking
well,
up.
oh darn, that's a valid
Dang
argument.
it.
All I have to do, there's
You can Photoshop anything, right?
I'd pay cash to see that. I'd pay cash to see that.
There you go. They'd watch it.
You don't have to actually show up in the video. You
No.
can just.
That'll get their
voice-
attention.
I do think that there'll be individuality in the presentation. I think we ought to have some pretty consistent way in which we present it,
Right.
which means that we ought to be doing it together,
Well,
at least.
Maybe it's the
at least
format
get
of the
the
video.
bullets for
Maybe,
the
yeah,
format.
maybe it's not the words, it's the format.
Speaking does help personalize the video.
Yes.
So if we all stood at the podium,
Oh, I think that's,
Well,
had this as the
we could
backdrop,
We could have you talking for a 15-second intro and then graphics, right? Like,
Oh,
people are gonna
excellent.
wanna see the maps.
Hide
They're not
behind
gonna wanna see the
PowerPoints.
Maps with you talking.
Oh, I love PowerPoint.
right. And a resident is gonna say, oh, I know Lou.
Right.
Oh, wow, he's on a video. Let me click it. And maybe they watch a minute of it, but, you know.
I would not like a monologue. I would prefer mostly graphics. Now, I know you're gonna wanna be up there.
No. I am like the furthest from that.
Can I see that
Yeah.
again, please?
Was that bowing or what was that?
I'm not sure what it was, but I liked
We're
it.
not sure what it was.
If you look at some of the videos, because they do some of these things as well. where they-
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
somebody do
Just enough to grab them to feel that
I get you, I
they're
get what you're saying.
there.
Like Meg Ryan starts off with a picture of Meg Ryan.
Yeah,
Right.
Right.
Because if you see a person, you're more likely.
But just an interest, because think about this, there's really only two ways to do this as far as standardizing the information, right, that gets presented, as opposed to having everybody just write their own script and having it be completely different, you know, and
Well-
who knows what Brandon's gonna do.
But each section's
I didn't even
written
know.
kind of the same anyway, so that you're pulling the information from the same sources.
Right, all I'm saying is division of labor, we could sit here in a work session and go through the whole thing, and it would, honestly, I think it would take a lot of time.
I didn't mean to sit through the work session to write the narratives. I meant to sit through the work session to actually video.
Sure, but all I'm saying is if we want to make the information sound the same across all the videos, we honestly just need to go through the general plan and bullet point the points that we want to talk about, right?
Right.
And
That's
then,
fine.
that's all I'm saying is if we can assign the different sections and then come back in 2 weeks or whenever our next meeting is and have those bullet points ready, or even just email them, right? We have to get some measurable progress going, so.
Well, maybe we need to do an email that's assigning who's gonna take what sections, and then from there, the next one, either between now and next meeting, we come with the bullet points and you present them, or we go back and forth through email.
And then get feedback on the bullet points.
Parks,
Yeah.
just solely parks.
Okay.
Okay? Does anybody else have a specific passion on a section they wish to present?
Per Lou, I think I'm just gonna be the face of it all. Is that okay, Lou?
What was that?
She'll just be the face of it all, she
I
said.
don't know.
I'm just
I'm at the end establishing credibility after they've listened to the young people. No.
So do you want me just to
I
make
think active
assignments?
transportation, if there's a piece, I've been involved in that.
There you go.
Who's a member on the?
I'm actually on the active transportation committee, so.
So Lou, transportation.
But all
Active.
that is to get the bullet points written out as quickly as possible and then get a second pair of eyes on it.
Yeah, that's
So that
fair.
in case you miss something in the bullet
You have a
points,
passion
get it
you
all.
want to
Tell them
do?
what you need to present.
I could do economic development unless someone else wants it. You got it, or?
Can I have a table of what they are? Them listed, please.
Yeah. Darren will hand you his just as soon as he makes his selection.
Right. I like that.
I don't want land use, that's the,
I can
well, that's all
do,
broken down into different things too. Let's see, I'm gonna have.
I can do land use or,
What about,
vision or
I'll do
something.
community vision and character.
oh, there you
If you need more on parks, Ted, let me know. That's not a huge.
go. I can
Okay,
do
I will.
land use, or do you wanna do land use?
Okay.
You can do transportation, you can do. land
I don't
use.
wanna do transportation. I wanna do land use. If that's what's left, what's housing though?
We'll talk.
We'll figure, I'll take whatever. Land use, housing, any of those I'm fine to talk about. I don't want
Why don't I
transportation.
take moderate income housing?
Okay,
That's.
there you go, yes. Is that what housing
Would be
falls
the
under?
obvious
Yeah.
appropriate choice for that one,
I want land use.
since I don't understand half of that.
And that's gonna be challenging. It's gonna be to a point, it's gonna be a moving target. So,
Yeah, that's perfect.
okay. So I will, you may get another assignment as we break this down. Lou, did you have one, or excuse me, Lyle?
No, I don't, just whatever you tell me to do, I'll do.
Okay. Who else did I miss?
So just send me an
What you
email
ought to
on
do
this.
is look at the general plan, and if we got holes, we have, we may have to double up, or
I think I'm gonna do
is
land
she gonna do
use.
land use?
I'll do housing.
Who's your neighbor?
Who took transportation, was that?
Transportation's Lou. He gets active and normal. Cause the other
Yours is
transportation,
street, is yours just, what
it's
is
just roads.
roads, okay.
Where we envision.
We kind of
Isn't that
dovetail,
transportation?
yeah, we've got to get together, because
Chapter 6, community facilities is still available.
Okay, and
But
that's,
Lyle doesn't have one, right?
Just whatever you want me to do, I'll do.
I'm gonna use the restroom.
I'm either.
okay, we'll break for a few minutes.
Good.
No, let's make sure and take your mic up to the dais.
We want to separate the table and pull that up like we had last time.
All you gotta do is out.
You go. Yeah, in my office.
they did that the logo, you came early.
This is the.
Sorry, I stole your mic.
As long as you don't see the bloodshot.
I saw the triangles.
Oh, it's almost done. Yeah, there's a, they got also, just what's on.
Pay a cabinet maker to come in here and cut
Good.
12 inches.
I tell you, I couldn't
Yes.
agree with you more. I have to decide what I'm gonna do with myself. It's never comfortable.
Keeping a straight face was really hard.
I had a lecture in a huge auditorium, it's like a staircase. So I had to use a microphone, it was the craziest thing. It was sort of like this, like a snake.
Oh, yeah, I've
And it
seen
had a
those.
coat hanger
Around your neck, yeah.
You know, it made me nervous because I always felt like I had a super great lightning. I had a certain length of cord and I thought I had it all figured out. And I like to kind of go back and forth. One too many steps. And so pictures of and all of a sudden I take a step I disappear. You know, but of course you want to get up and say, I meant to do that. But you've been jabbed in the face with this microphone. I bet my face is covered with Flint's shirt, you know. And to try to act calm, but they enjoyed that.
I did something similar, only I put a hole in the sheetrock. Cable's got me.
We have those moments.
This is table 2. I guess it doesn't matter.
Thank you, Lindsay. Oh, that's okay.
Apparently. I only got table 2.
Doing what you told me, Geneva.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we're going to try.
I forgot about last time.
To give Steve the time to properly. Oh, he's opening everything before we start.
Geneva told me to get with the program.
Like, there's lots of people here. They don't want to get car sick. I appreciate this.
Me too.
So if anyone wants to see anything, just let me know.
Okay.
Did you get my email?
I'm interested in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, please.
I sent some pictures.
Oh, this is kind of fun.
I sent you an email and I knew it was probably too
I
late.
guess we should actually wait.
I sent some pictures of
Okay, that's right.
the fall fishing.
Every time though.
Something you could pull and post up on the.
That clock's slow, by the way.
Yeah, we're waiting on the computer to say it's 7 o'clock, so we're
30 seconds.
in conformance with the
I mean,
law.
it's not a big deal. I just thought it would be interesting for people to see.
3 seconds is a long time when you're waiting 30 seconds.
Yeah, I should have called you, but I thought, well, it might have been too late.
We'll call to order the meeting of the Far West City Planning Commission. It is 7 o'clock, October 14th, 2021. We'll begin our meeting by repeating the Pledge of Allegiance. Brandon will lead us, if you'll all stand, and then Darren will give us an opening prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear kind Father in heaven, we're grateful this evening to be here for Planning Commission meeting. We pray that thy Spirit will attend us as we discuss the affairs of our great community of Far West. We're grateful for this country we live in, and we pray that thou will protect our country and our community. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to serve in this community, and we're grateful for the citizens that are here in attendance. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a report from the city council. Mr. Phippen.
Yes, thank you. We met here last Thursday, October 7th, 7 p.m. Before that, we actually had a meet the candidates night, and that was a lot of fun. But once we got into our regular meeting, we had our opening ceremonies. There were no public comments. We had a report from Planning Commission, and then we got into business items. The business items, the first was a discussion action on the conditional use permit and business license of Special Blend Motor Garage. I'm not going to go through the whole conversation of that. In the end, we motioned to revoke the business license and conditional use on the land for Special Blend Motor Garage, and it was I believe it was 5-1 vote in favor of the revocation. Our next item was B&G Management LLC property rezone. We did approve that per your recommendations. Pardon me for reading through this. These are minutes that are almost complete. And it's okay. The next item we had was the approval of the ordinance of the livestock ordinance. That was also approved unanimously. We also approved the modified site plan for Weber Fire District. All voted aye on that one. We then moved into a discussion about how solid waste is collected and who's going to do that. And I believe we approved the contract for the residential solid waste with our current one per the Econo Waste per the contract that was drawn up. We then had a nice long discussion about a code enforcement officer. It was just a discussion. We took no action, but it will be on a future agenda item for a recommendation from Mr. Blaser. We then approved the minutes, we paid the bills, we reported on our assignments, and we adjourned. Are there any questions?
Seeing none, Ken, thank you very much for your report. The next item on our agenda is 2 public hearings. I think it would be best if we considered these individually, so we're looking for a motion on the first public hearing.
The motion, we move into the first public hearing, requesting the rezone for John Watson's property located at 1246 North, 2000 West.
Okay, motion to enter a public hearing to consider the property at 1246 North, 2000 West.
From an A1 to an R115.
Thank you. From an A1 zone to an R115 zone. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Greg. Motion was by Geneva. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are now in a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would care to comment on this proposed rezone? Please state your name and your address, please.
Jim Flint, 1576 Far West Drive. John Watson couldn't make it tonight. I'm just here on his behalf. And on this thing, I think it's important to realize what the fundamental purpose of this rezone is. John has a house that he's trying to sell to his son on about, it's been surveyed, it's a 19,000 square foot lot, roughly a half acre. So that's the driving impetus behind everything. There's 3 matters, I think. First one is, it's in an A1 zone right now. So theoretically, if he were to expand the parcel, he could go ahead and proceed on his own, kind of control your own destiny avenue, would be just to use the existing zoning to accomplish the purpose. The second part is, the request is for an A1 to an R15 zone to be able to accomplish a smaller residential footprint. But fundamentally, it's residential to residential. The third one, and I can appreciate this, there was a letter that you might have received, and that was that the general plan is for the area is a C2 commercial zone. And it's been advanced, if there's a way to do a commercial zone with a residential CUP, conditional use permit, that might be a strategy and a good way to proceed and save John from doing a two-step process. There is difficulty with that. I appreciate the good intentions of that, but the looking at the code 17-36-040, the residential part of that conditional use permit isn't ordinance allowed. So it's not a good end game strategy to try to circle back in that direction and try to accomplish this.
Well, please remember, this is only to consider going from an A1 to an R115. That's all we can consider.
Okay, I'll finish up the comment then. Yep. So in closing, the applicant's desire can only be realized in a residential zone. And the interesting irony of this perhaps is that going from the A1 to the R115 actually minimizes the residential footprint that's being petitioned. So obviously I wholeheartedly recommend that this rezone take place primarily based on the applicant's fundamental desire to basically carve off an existing home in a residential zone. Thank
Could I
you.
ask a question?
Sure.
The configuration of the lot, is it T-shaped like this diagram suggests, or is it just the upper northern part?
Just the upper northwest.
So that
corner.
little extension down to the south is not part of the lot we're talking about?
That's just existing fence.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anyone else care to comment on this portion? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Motion we close the public hearing or move on to the next one, I think.
Let's close.
Okay, close.
So motion by Geneva to close the public hearing considering the rezone of this property from A1 to an R15 zone. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lou. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. I'll now entertain a motion to go into a public hearing to consider a conditional use permit for the Andy Fishburne property for an accessory building, a 5,500 square foot accessory building located at 1797 Heritage Ranch Drive. Is there a motion?
I move that we open that public hearing.
Motion by Lou to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lyle. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We're now in a public hearing to consider an accessory building on the aforementioned property. Is there anyone that would care to comment on that property? Seeing none, I would consider another motion.
I move that we exit the public hearing.
Motion by Steve to leave the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a recommendation to the city council on action to consider the request of a rezone on the John Watson property located at 1246 North, 2000 West. Parcel number is given from an A1 zone to an R115 zone. There are some challenges with this. We are, if we do this, we are trusting the applicant that he'll come back in and actually do what he said he would do, which would then further conform with the current general plan. So we are placing some trust in Mr. Watson.
I'm confused on this one. I'm confused because I'm confused. And then Ken's email about it, because it's supposed to be a C2 and I'm confused. And then and Jim coming up and saying that he wants the residential, but it doesn't conform with the, so the applicant obviously wants the residential zone, but we're trusting him to come back and make it commercial.
So there's a house on part of this property, which he wants to carve off and make an R115 zone.
Right, I get that
It's an
part.
existing piece of property. The rest of the property, he wants zone C2.
We can't do a conditional use because if he sells the other parcel, this is null and void.
But that's future action. Currently, this whole parcel is residential.
Yeah,
So to keep life simple, he's changing it from one type of residential to another type of residential, which is more restrictive in the lot size, which this clearly satisfies. I think we shouldn't cloud our discussion with what he anticipates to do after this, because that's not his request tonight.
but so if that's true, then we're basically saying, okay, we're fine with this being R115. Because technically he doesn't have to
So,
come back.
and that's the problem, is this property in our general plan is C2.
Except if you look at the narrative for that, the narrative says that that particular portion between 2000 West and the interstate can be used for either. And there's no suggestion that, in fact, it's pretty emphatic that those that are currently in residential zones are not going to be forced to go commercial.
No, right.
It's just a potential commercial, not an existing commercial.
Right.
So what I see is all he's doing is taking an existing commercial and changing the type of commercial it is.
Residential.
Residential.
Excuse me. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Thanks for
I knew
correcting me,
what you
but you
meant, yeah.
understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So he's just going residential to residential. There may be some decision that we will have to address in the future where he may subdivide it and create commercial from that, but that's really not the request we're being presented with tonight.
The only thing that happens that we always talk about is spot zoning, and all of a sudden you've got commercial, residential, commercial.
Except all he's saying is I want to change the commercial.
But it's an existing
What do I
home.
keep
Oh,
saying?
yeah,
It is
you're sorry, it's
residential.
already Ag 1.
An old mine.
Well, and we're going to experience this type of spot zoning over the next 20 years. As what happens is as property becomes more and more valuable, people are more likely to sell it. And so, along this particular stretch of road in Far West City, the potential that the property would be sold at some point as commercial is fairly high. Sir, please sit down. Thank you.
I'm not against it. I just want to make sure that everyone is clear because I was a little confused and the last meeting with how it all went down, I was confused. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page that it is all going to a smaller residential zone.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and
He's subdividing that piece off, correct? And
that's the end goal. So you'll remember his original request was to rezone rezone part of it R115 and part of it C2, but he didn't have the property divided. And so we told him one or the other. He asked for the R115, if you'll remember. And so that's what we gave him. I don't think this is a bad idea. And I think meets the intent of what we're trying to do here. And it does preserve that residential piece of property.
And leaves the rest agriculture for now.
Well, it stays, it will all be, so that whole
All
piece will be
R115.
R115. So what he does with that in the future is hard to say. So I'm gonna break protocol here. Sir, I don't think you understood that we were to comment in the public hearing, is that correct? Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I did.
Please come to the microphone, tell us your name and address.
My name's Boyd Fisher. I live 1218 North, 2000 West. I'm the owner of the property to the north of this property. I don't know whether you got my zone handy, do you?
Lindsay, do
I
you know
don't.
his is zoned? I believe it's A1 also. That makes sense that it would be.
He's got a different.
Hey, Jim, I don't allow talking from the audience.
I didn't bring my hearing aid. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
What I was kind of getting at I sold this property because of the deceased of my brother to Mr. Watson, and I'm fully aware of some of the stuff he's trying to do. We got another development even farther to the north than me. You know, I don't know my circumstances in life, but I plan on letting my kids sell this when I'm deceased. But it's not gonna affect my zone any, is it?
No,
I don't think so.
no, it will not. Yours will be considered as an individual piece of property if and when the owner decides to request a rezone or sell the
I
property.
actually have two pieces of property. Anybody got an idea what the other one is?
So we need to stay focused on the piece of property we're discussing on the agenda. Okay, so we're only discussing the property owned by John Watson and the rezone. Do you have a comment pertinent to that?
I just made my comment what I thought I needed to say.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir.
I think he's just trying to make sure that
It won't
it's
affect
not going to
you.
affect him, right?
Right,
So,
and it doesn't
yeah,
affect Mr. Fisher's property. So, we have on the agenda a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council. What is the desire of the Planning Commission?
so may I ask one last question? So I guess the only concern is this whole parcel goes R115. Is there any liability to the city? I mean, R115, I would say, is against the best interest of the city, given where we think this is going to end up as far as commercial zone. Are we opening ourselves up legally to this being developed as R115?
That's what I'm saying. I want, like, he even pointed out, that was my exact question. I think he has no idea what's happening right here. So I'm saying he could come in and say, I'm gonna turn this into R115 lots.
And he would have every right to do so.
But to do that, he would have to, first of all, create a subdivision.
Yes.
Right.
You need to understand there's two steps in this. If he converts it, and I'll try to say residential, not commercial this time. If he converts it from an A1 to an R115, it's still residential. If in the future, he wishes to convert the remainder to commercial, he would have to, first of all, come in and get approval for a minor subdivision. And then after that, he would have to get that portion that's not residential rezoned commercial. So there's a two-step process for him to even get to the commercial phase.
Right, right. But my concern is if we zone this as R115 and they decide, well, and I'm not saying that he would, certainly, I'm just saying, are we opening ourselves up to?
Because we're saying the opposite, Lou. I'm fine with it being commercial. I'm
Yeah.
saying the opposite. He could say, oh, well, I'm just gonna come back and I'm R115 lots here and it's gonna be a residential off 2000
And we would
West.
still have to approve that subdivision.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
we zoned
not
it as
against it either way.
R115.
I just think there's some people on the commission that don't understand that.
So.
So I
the-
want that to be clear, because
It-
last meeting was confusing.
Last meeting was
Yeah.
confusing. The issue that we do have that does provide some level of protection to the city is Mr. Watson has made it clear in writing via an application that his intent was to subdivide a small piece of this property off for his son and that the rest of it be C2. And so we have an intent document filed by Mr. Watson that we could, and I don't see any reason why we would need to, but the potential is there that the property was sold, Mr. Watson changed his mind, any of those things could happen, and that could be proposed as a residential subdivision.
Right.
As I said, the protection the city has is we actually have a document filed by him that says his intent was something different. And if that's the intent we used to help him in this step to achieve that, I think the city does have some protection.
Okay, and that's fine. And I believe that he will follow through on his word. It's simply that circumstances change, right? So I just want to make sure that if our vision for this corridor is commercial, I mean, truly the safe answer is the property should be divided and each of them should be zoned separately, right?
Right,
Yes.
and that's what will eventually have to happen.
Right.
And as I said, we do have an intent document, which makes this quite a bit different than if someone just came in and said, this is my intent in the future.
Well, if you're saying that that gives us some legal protection, then I will move that we recommend to the city council, action on the request to consider the rezone of the John Watson property located at 1246 North, 2000 West, from the A1 zone to the R115 zone.
And you're recommending approval.
Recommending approval.
Okay, a recommended approval of this rezone by Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lou. Further discussion to this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is a recommendation to the city council of action on a request of a conditional use permit for Andy Fishburne for a 5,500 square foot accessory building located at 1797 Heritage Ranch Drive. What is the desire of the planning commission?
Could I ask one question? Do we have any idea where this building is positioned on the lot?
There's a map on the document.
Want the applicant to come up and kind of just explain what he's doing, why, how he got here, all
Sure,
that?
is Mr. Fishburne here? Yeah. Come on up and tell us about your building.
It's hard to see there, but it's that,
Can you pull up?
Is it that white block?
Aerial?
it's that white rectangle right
Is
there.
it this right here, Darren?
That's where you're circling.
That's it? Okay.
If you
So it's
go
like-
to the last page of the document, it'll just show you, yeah, there you go.
Okay, oh, great.
All the setbacks are good.
Oh, perfect setbacks.
Okay, Andy, explain to us what you want to do.
Just building a basketball court. That's it.
Okay. That's the simplest, most beautiful explanation we've ever had.
That's it.
I do find that hard to believe with a theater identified and a kitchen area, that it's just a basketball court.
Well, my kids are gonna hang out there and they're gonna hang out. I mean, so basketball court, they
It's
hang
just
out.
a little more than a basketball court, in my opinion.
What does it matter? If I
It
put-
doesn't.
I mean,
I'm just saying it's more than a basketball court.
not really.
Andy might want to stay out there a long time.
Just as long as you don't establish residence.
Yeah, no one's gonna live there. We don't even have to put doors on it. But there's gonna be a kitchen, there's gonna be a bathroom, so when they're out there, they can hang out.
Okay, any further questions?
I see that the
The
height was a little over last time when I see on that.
And that's been adjusted on the plan. We appreciate you taking care of that.
We got the feet and
that
inches,
will-
right?
Yeah, that will be checked on your inspection, so make sure that doesn't get built higher than 25 feet.
I remember, I'm not building it.
I've made people tear things down before and it's really unpleasant.
I'm not, I'll measure it with you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You're done. Appreciate you coming up. Further questions from the planning commission? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move that we recommend to the city council action on the request of a conditional use permit for Andy Fishburne for a 5,500 square foot accessory building located at 1797 Heritage Ranch Drive.
And that action is approval?
Yes.
Motion by Lyle to approve the accessory building on the aforementioned property. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Geneva. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a recommendation to the city council of the preliminary approval of the Parkside Estates subdivision located at approximately 1995 North, 2000 West. The developer has met with both our stormwater people and our building official and have resolved for a preliminary approval the concerns that they initially had. Are there questions from the planning commission?
I have a couple. I'm wondering, the parcel A and parcel B on that 1950 road is going to be owned by whom and maintained by whom?
Why don't you come up? Yes, please.
Brian Bayless. My address is 1656 South Equestrian Parkway,
And who do you represent?
Nilsson Homes.
Thank you.
So parcels A and B would be owned by us, by Nilsson Homes, into perpetuity. That entrance is an important entrance to our project, and we've got to make sure it's maintained well and looks good. So we would plan and propose a landscaping plan, which we would install. We would continue to maintain ownership. And then once the homes in there are sold, we would eventually turn that over to the homeowners association to continue to manage into perpetuity.
So the homeowners association
This
would
is gonna-
ultimately be responsible for maintaining it.
Right, this is gonna be an HOA.
Yes.
Further discussion or questions?
Can I just point out maybe 3 or 4 things that we have changed, or does that not?
Oh, please go ahead.
Does that not matter?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so just a couple of things that we did change. So there was some questions on the flag lot and roughly the location of lots 5 and 6. So we've gone ahead, taken out that cul-de-sac to remove that to make it consistent with kind of the city's ordinances. Number 2, we added, if you'll notice, it's kind of hard to see what those lot numbers are. So I think it's 16, maybe 19, yeah, right in there. So we added right along 16, 19, 36 on essentially the west side of, or excuse me, the east side of 2250. We've added a space sufficient there for a 10-foot easement for a trail corridor. I think according to the city's parks and then active transportation plan, there was a trail that went all along that power line corridor. And so we felt like putting that, you'd have to cross 2 roads. So if you put it along the power line corridor, yeah, where the mouse is located, you'd have to cross the road once there, and you'd have to cross the road once again when you get down to 1975 North, which is just on the bottom of the page there. And so right now, we liked putting that up next to the road. It's much more active as opposed to being in people's backyards, and when you'd fence it on both sides, there's just the potential for things that maybe are not so good to happen back there. And so we kind of placed that along the road to be more active. And then if you zoom down on the map just a scotch, you can see that we have allowed for that trail to connect further south between lots 42 and 43 there to connect up with the property on the south, which again, that is consistent with the city's parks and kind of active transportation plan. So that was a big change that we made. Number 3, we now only have 30 lots, Ted, in phase 1, not 31, we have 30. And we've moved some fire hydrants according to Kent's suggestion, the city engineer's suggestion, as well as added streetlights. So our hope is, well, not our hope, according to Kent's comments, we have addressed all of engineering concern. I know, Commissioner Best, one of the things that you brought up last time was we had 2 pages of comments, and that's a lot of comments. So we've addressed all of those and hope to get your recommendation for approval onto council.
I've got one other issue.
Yeah.
Phase 1 is fine. You've got 30 lots and 1 egress. Phase 2 isn't fine because there is not a second egress.
Right.
So do you own the property to the south or the north?
We do not.
Okay, I would have a great deal of difficulty giving preliminary approval to both phases.
Yeah, so.
Because phase 2 is in violation of our code. There is not a second egress.
Fair. We recognize that, and we will not build another one of those homes in phase 2 until we have an additional secondary access. So that's our commitment. That's noted on the plat in several different locations. We fully understand that and appreciate that. Furthermore, we will not be, obviously, we wanted to lay that out as almost a courtesy, just so that you could see that it worked and that we were still following the plan. But again, that's for a future phase. We can't get approval, and it says that explicitly on the plans.
Well, that does relate to a motion that would be made because it should be specific to phase
Stated.
1 and not phase 1 and phase 2.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Very good. Why don't you sit down? Let's see if anybody from the public would like to talk on this
Is it
subdivision.
preliminary on phase 1 and 2 though? Because we've done this before where we've given all the way up, haven't we, all the way up to final, and then they just
I
can't.
wouldn't vote in the affirmative for a preliminary on phase 2 without a second egress.
So
There is no attempt at a second egress on this.
And
no
that's
access.
the challenge. There actually is no plan for a second egress. Jim, you had a comment. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, we thought it best to show you the master plan so you could see how it all ties together. This is just preliminary. It's a phase preliminary, and in my opinion, it's self-enforcing. the phase two, we couldn't come back to you for final without having that culminated.
In my view, though, a preliminary, you should see a pathway to the final when you're reviewing it for preliminary approval. And in the case of your phase two, you don't have a solution to the second egress in what we're looking at.
Are there any just thoughts about where that second egress would even be?
Maybe that road,
Right.
yeah.
So.
Northbound.
Yeah, so originally, Randy Marriott's property to the north, Brentwood, was laid out. And you can kind of see some conceptual lines. We were asked to stub that in both locations because that was consistent with kind of Brentwood's original plan. And furthermore, especially the road on the west side of the property, there's not a lot of alternatives in terms of how you lay that out. Running a row of lots right against the canal and then running a road in front of those is really kind of Randy's only alternative and option. And so in terms of the future, Lou, to your question, that would be obviously option number one. And then option number two, would be coming from the south. So you can see that road, I think it's.
I'm pretty, in fact, I'm confident that road to the south's not an option.
To connect up.
The one stubbed into the south, I can say with a surety that's not an option.
We'd be happy to take it off. We kind of put it on there.
Oh, I like it stubbed where it is,
Okay,
but for a secondary exit anytime soon, not an option.
may not be okay. Yeah, and we've conceptually talked to Randy. Obviously, we talked to him we've talked to him on and off on a lot of projects in other locations, and we'd love to work with him on, buying this property from him if that's an option. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it was Commissioner Hurd, that's our plan, those two connections to the north.
Why don't you guys sit down? Let's see if anybody from the public would like to speak. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Please tell us who you are and your address, please.
My name is Ed Raymer, and I live at 1931 North, 2000 West. My property is the property that is the south border of that development entirely. I have quite a few concerns with it. One is that road, depending on how they actually place it, will be within about 20 feet of my bedroom windows on the north side of my property. So I would really love to see that road was as far north as it possibly can be to take noise and other things north of me. The other thing that I'm really kind of concerned about is I have 8.5 acres there that follow that all the way down, all the way to the canal is all of my property behind his. So I'd want to know, what are they doing to separate my agricultural land and my property from the development in order to secure it from what they're planning to build there? Right now, it's just lots that empty on my lot, so I don't know what kind of controls that they'll have or I'll have to implement myself in order to secure my property. We have horses on our property currently. And so that's a risk to me and to whoever might buy and live there. Those are most of my concerns. And as you mentioned, yeah, I've talked with the state because I was looking at doing some work on my curb and gutter, and even my driveway that comes out of my house that has been there since 1966 cannot stay there. It is this UDOT has determined it is now a temporary access that must be closed if the house is ever reconstructed, because it cannot be that close to other roads and areas. So no other egress can come out through our properties there.
Thank you, Mr. Raymer. So that would be,
Second person coming up.
oh, please, tell us who you are and your address, please.
In Pippin, 3372 North, 2575 West. I see on here that there is in a bend a knuckle. I want clarification on whether we can have knuckles.
Oh, this right here?
Yeah, that's not gonna happen, but that's down the road. So the city does not allow knuckles.
How come Kent Jones didn't make a note of that?
It's a good question.
He didn't comment on that.
Yeah, so, and where that's in phase two, I don't know that that's a roadblock. I think it's fair that you address Mr. Raymer's question, though, on how are you going to protect his agricultural property against residential property?
So I think that I think he had two concerns, the distance of the road in proximity to his home there. Unfortunately, that road, the property kind of comes off at an angle, and UDOT requires that we pull that out at a perpendicular angle. So we have to be a completely 90-degree angles. And so you can tell that we tried to push that property kind of as far to the north as we could and still make those bends work and the road feel good. So we popped it off close to Edward's property, the Raymer's property, as you're on 2000 West, but we tried to immediately pull that away as you work that direction on the property. If we had flexibility or a lot of latitude, I'd be much more willing to move that road and kind of get it where it needs to be. But there are not a lot of options in terms of.
Well, I understand that. Would you be willing to do some landscaping to help buffer the noise?
Right. And that's another element. So that's definitely one of the things to consider. And then the last would be, especially along those lots, that obviously is a major concern with anybody with horses and horse property or property just in general. And so we would intend on the entirety of the boundary of the property next to both the trailer park or the RV storage, Edwards property, as well as on the canal, we would be putting up a 6-foot solid vinyl fence. So that would be, important to address that concern. So.
Super, thank you. Anyone else in the public care to comment on this issue? Well, please state your name and your address, please.
My name's Deborah Raymer, and I live at 1931 North, 2000 West. A couple years ago, when I found out that Nielsen Homes was going to be developing this, I approached them with us buying anything between the road and our property so that we would maintain that. And also that we were interested in a couple of lots in the back. I'd be interested in knowing about what the homeowners association's requirements are going to be for the home. My son-in-law would like to build a house back there, but he's not too interested in a homeowners association.
You'll need to take those questions up with Nielsen Homes.
Okay.
Okay.
I tried that before and got told they weren't doing anything with it
Oh,
at
well,
that time.
try again.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, bringing it back to the Planning Commission. As Lou has so aptly pointed out, currently phase 1 is and what has been presented would be code compliant. Phase 2 at this time would not be. As a note, what is the desire of the Planning Commission?
Well, I've expressed mine. I would have no problem recommending preliminary approval for phase 1 with the understanding that when they approach us for additional phases, one of the conditions would be a second egress.
So we have a motion by Lou to recommend to the City Council preliminary approval of phase 1 of the Parkside Estates subdivision located at approximately 1995 North, 2000 West. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Geneva. Further discussion to the motion.
Are they planning to construct 1975 North at this time? Or is that gonna be with the future phase?
That's this road underneath right here.
That
Yeah, I
line.
mean, 1975 would have to be stubbed as far and that would be on the final. But in order to do that, to accommodate the lot, if it exceeds 150 feet, there'd have to be a turnaround and so forth, and that would all be on the final drawings. So other discussion on was that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm concerned that if they put 1975 in,
Well,
they
no,
start
they're
selling
gonna-
lots.
They're gonna start here. They're gonna stop.
Yeah,
there.
they have to stop
Yeah, they
there.
won't put the whole thing in.
They would not have approval to put the rest of the
They'll
road
have
in.
they'll actually have 3 stub, just 2 stubs, I guess, right? On 2250.
2250.
And also on 1975.
And the one onto the Raymer property at 2100.
Well, that will just be a corner, they'll just
Right.
create a corner. That
right.
would be a stub, right now at least.
Okay.
Right.
I agree with Lou in that I think phase one is just fine.
Is that a second?
I will second, yes, just with the understanding that, with that second egress, right, if we're depending upon the property to the north for that second egress, there's gotta be a fair amount of flexibility there because, you know, we talked about this last time, but it is in the plan to have a park in that northern property at some point, and we just all have to be flexible in terms of where things actually end up. So, but I think phase one looks fine, so I will second that. Or Geneva seconded that already.
Oh, yeah, I seconded.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I had written that down and then I scribbled it out. I apologize.
Could we make certain that in the minutes, it's made clear though that when they come to us with a discussion about future phases, they must present them with a second egress. So we're giving them a reason why we're only taking action on phase one.
Do you want me to read your motion that I wrote?
Uh,
It's with the it's preliminary approval of phase two with the condition that any future phases come back in for preliminary approval once the second egress is obtained.
I believe you
Phase
misspoke.
one, not phase
The
two.
approval of-
Ed, I do not permit comments from the audience.
Sorry about that.
Recommending preliminary approval of phase two.
Phase one.
with
One.
the
Phase one.
Phase one.
Phase-
Sorry, you're right.
That's what he was saying, yeah.
That's okay.
Phase one with the condition that they come back with the second.
So the motion, again, is preliminary approval of Parkside Estates Phase One only, with the proviso that Phase Two is not receiving preliminary approval and would have to come back in for preliminary approval when the subdivision is ready to be developed. So we are only considering Phase One, and that's all that was in the motion. Is that correct, Lou?
That's correct.
And your second, Geneva, is that correct?
Correct.
So with that being said, I will call the question. All those in favor of approval of the preliminary subdivision layout, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries. You have preliminary approval of your subdivision. The next item, or excuse me, you have our recommendation, of preliminary approval of your subdivision. The next item on our agenda is to set alternative dates for the November Planning Commission meeting to Wednesday, November 10th for a work session and a regular meeting, and Tuesday, November 23rd for a work session only. This is to accommodate the holidays. What is the desire of the Planning Commission?
Okay, so it's Wednesday, November 10th for a work session and regular meeting, and then Tuesday, okay. I'm just changing things. to
I'll
make
be
sure.
absent on the 23rd.
I will be absent on Wednesday as well.
So we are doing a work session.
So, and keep in mind, even if we approve this, if the 23rd becomes undoable, we can revise this on the first meeting in November. So would you put that on the first agenda in November just to revisit this? Thank you. So are we interested in tonight changing our first meeting to Wednesday? As the 11th is Veterans Day, and the 23rd then being 2 days before Thanksgiving. We could also do it Monday, the 22nd, if that would be better.
It's up to the commission. I personally will not be available on the 23rd. And you mentioned,
I will not be available on the 10th, but it just depends on what you need me there for with regards to the things we were talking about earlier in the work session, so.
Are we at 6 on the 23rd? Okay, sorry, I'm
What
just
did you
done.
say for that one?
Are we doing 6 o'clock work session? I'd prefer that. On the
Yes.
23rd?
On
Okay,
the,
sorry.
yes, just a work session, 6 o'clock, 1 hour, hard stop at 7 o'clock.
Um,
Is there a motion?
I motioned that we move our planning commission meeting in November to November 10th, including a work session beginning at 6 o'clock. Planning commission meeting beginning at 7. Also that we move the work session meeting to Tuesday, November 23rd, 6 PM with a hard stop at 7.
Motion by Greg to approve our meeting changes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lyle. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our September 23rd, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion? Well, first, are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I motion we approve the minutes dated September 23rd, 2021.
Motion by Geneva to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. Further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. Minutes are approved. Item number 5, report on assignments. Darren.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Brandon.
I have nothing to report.
Steve.
Need to report?
Lyle.
I got a few things real quick. Smith Park Playground, the triangle piece is pretty much done, except we're still waiting on parts, right, Ken? And we are, once those parts are in and everything's working, we are done with the park. And Ken is currently working with Vern, and Mick has also gone around to identify what needs to be done and needs to be updated in all the other playgrounds now. So Vern is sending in proposals for updating the other playgrounds. And also the fishing club, we wrapped it up, worked really well. We had some great people. Steve's posting some pictures so you guys can see just what we do there.
I was trying to figure out if that was a mistake in the Dropbox or if they were.
Oh,
That's
it's,
great.
and there's Lou and his infinite,
See, he's meant for film.
Professor Lou.
Can you wear that Far West hat on TV?
I don't have it.
But it's a really rewarding experience with these kids, and we had some very happy campers.
Well, I've been told you should go out, and I have not, but you should go out and watch the fishing club just for the entertainment value.
Oh, it is. It's something else.
Casting for the plastic bass.
Yeah. And one thing, we've got some great volunteers. We actually had another individual step up. He's from Far West. He was there with some friends, and he actually volunteered to help. I've got his contact information, but we're also, I was able to make it my way down to Shills finally. And with that $100 gift card, was able to purchase 48 spinners.
Oh, good.
For that way, we don't, we're covered for the spring session. And then also on a side note, as far as the park meetings, we had reports of fish escaping. We got some, they plant the fish there and they end up in the canal. And so I was talking to Nate about it and during the park meeting, and short of putting a screen in there and having to keep that clean, because some of the fishermen has reported that they're catching fish way up the canal, and we know they come from the pond. And so I'm in the process now of I'm trying to get a hold of Cody Edwards. I gotta go take some pictures and see if there's some way we can get a trap somehow on the inlet and the outlet to keep those fish from disappearing. Even though they're bred, they're raised in a small area, they still have the desire to get the heck out of town. So anyway, so I'm working on that, just trying to figure out a way to keep the fish from swimming upstream and staying in the pond and getting caught. So that's all I got.
Lyle, thank you very much. Lou?
Nothing.
Geneva?
Thanks.
Greg?
Nothing. Appreciate you doing that.
And I have nothing. I'll entertain a final, excuse me. Now is the time in our agenda for public comment. Is there anyone in the public that would care to comment on something that is not on the agenda? Please, tell us who you are and your address, please.
My name is Ed Raymer. I live at 1931 North 2000 West. Thank you, folks, for what you do.
Thanks, Ed. Another comment. Your name and address, please.
I hope it's like that one.
But Ken, you never know.
You never know. This guy likes to talk for some reason. No, you already know my information. But anyway, I attended the Weber County Planning Commission earlier this week.
For the S-curve property?
The S-curve thing. It was quite interesting. So they did recommend approval to the county commission on a 5-to-1 motion. or approval. And so, yeah, that's something that will have to be dealt with. It was interesting because they were, you know, they loved the idea, the plan and all that, which it wasn't a horrible plan because it was master planned, which isn't a bad idea. Lots of open space and all that kind of stuff. You know, they did do some adjustments in some of the zoning on it a little bit, but there's still going to be, they have this number of 725 units. So
Are there gonna be townhouses?
that's part of them. There's
Part of
a full range of product, as they like to call it. One of the things they did that I found interesting is they also had other things coming in, but they have this, what they give is, I don't want to call them cluster credits, but kind of cluster credits for, you know, open space. And so that's something it's actually in our code right now. It sort of worded, but not exactly, but it's like bonus density is what some of the words that they use.
And it's staying in the county, it's Nielsen Homes.
Right now, so it got interesting because it's like they all agreed it's an island
Okay.
in between two communities.
Does that mean they're gonna run their own sewer line to the sewer plant?
That's some of the challenges that they have, because even though the plant said they can process what comes from there, there isn't a way to get it there yet. So they're gonna have those challenges. And I told them that we're not interested in running another pipe through our city. But they're also, so they kind of approved it with the idea that either Plain City or Far West is going to annex it with how they zoned it.
So just so you know, if the county approves it and the city chose to annex that in, we are bound by the agreement made by the county.
Wow.
And so we'll have to incorporate those laws or those codes into our bill.
I don't see a scenario where we would do that, but just for your information, if the county approves it, and they come in for some reason to Far West, we are bound by that agreement.
Yeah, they have challenges like they were trying to figure out, and they were like, well, that's not something for us to consider right now.
They would have to petition to come into our city, though we would still have a say. They
Right.
can't
All
just
sorts of
jump
things
on
like that,
board,
but
yeah.
even if they stay in Island, they have challenges because they were even asking in there, who's gonna plow the roads? Who's gonna do garbage? All of those things, they don't really have a plan for that, and they're like, that's not part of this part, we're just rezoning, and we understand that
Maybe their
process,
plan
right?
is to
Knock
jump in.
yourselves out. I know that, well,
It,
we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it, but thank you for bringing it.
yeah.
Really interesting.
But it was an interesting process, and so
Well,
it is
no,
what it is. But what they did do, part of that rezone was also they did within that whole verbiage and in there what they were recommending, because it also was not part of the general plan of Weber County. They were changing the general plan of Weber County in order to do that. So that means that it will abide by the general plan because of the order of how things would be adopted. So something for us to consider.
Very good.
Thank
They
you.
could,
Thanks, Ken.
they couldn't use anything, any eminent domain or anything to be able to plow under Far West to just create the corridor for the sewer.
I don't know. I don't know if they could actually, I don't know. The lawyers actually, I think, would have to figure whether or not they could use eminent domain to bring a line through the city.
Ooh. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's beyond our scope.
Some cities more upset than we are right now.
Because it's in their municipal boundaries.
Well, and they wanted it, but
They wanted it.
And they had general plan for that problem.
yeah, they do.
Mentioned that a lot. They also
Didn't
mentioned
run the
that
meeting, so I can say what I want to say.
Okay.
it's one of those things, the way I described this, they went to mom, mom said no, went to dad, dad said no, so they went to grandpa.
That's exactly right. All right. So, we'll close public comment and I'll entertain a final motion.
I motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion by Geneva to adjourn, second by Greg. Further discussion to the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Hey.
This motion this meeting's adjourned.
You want to stay here all night?
Oh,
People in the audience
Lou.
can't make